of what we have. So right off the bat, from a dashboard standpoint, we want to make sure that you can add content as quickly as possible. In the event you are proposing a new policy or launching a policy attestation, exception request, or once again, this is more regulatory specific, but adding a new regulation record. Those are all things that you can do right here from the dashboard, literally at the click of a mouse. And you see here the application for creating a new policy record. And you'll notice, right off the bat, it's a lot of red, and it's because these are some of the core fields that are part of this policy record. So if I tried to save this, it's not going to let me. It's going to tell me I have more work to do. But I'll go into a pre-populated policy record here in just a minute. From a reporting standpoint, we have a few different kind of varieties of how your data can be displayed, different chart types, different components of what the underlying data is that's displayed. But regardless of the report, what I really like about OnSpring reporting is that it's dynamic, kind of in two ways. One, as you make updates to records in OnSpring, the reports will reflect those updates real time. There's not a 24-hour lag, or it is literally make a change to a record, and it will immediately be reflected on that report. And the other way that OnSpring reporting is dynamic is from how a user interacts with the report itself. If I click into that bar, it's only going to pull back those 3 records, or only those 5, or only, once again, kind of taking away the filter, and now I'm getting access to all 8 pertaining to this particular report. From here, I've seen it in some systems where, okay, great, you have nice reporting and metrics, but from this point, you can't drill into a record. OnSpring's not that way. We can drill directly into records right from these reports, and be down to that record level just with a matter of 1 or 2 clicks, as opposed to 6 or 7. So I'm going to edit this and show you a few of the components of the policies application. So these are these required fields that you saw when I first tried to create a new policy. And there's not a lot in here, but essentially to showcase what you can do, it's your general word style formatting. So if you're wanting to have more of a step-by-step statement, purpose, scope, bolding, italicizing, bolded list, numbered list, etc. If you're wanting to document that information here, you can completely do so with the kind of just functions here within OnSpring and within these field types. Responsibilities, similar interaction, but as you can see, no red line next to it, not required. Category, this is essentially going to help us do a couple of different things from a reporting standpoint, especially if these particular categories, are going to drive who may be owning them, or underlying departments or components of your org that would need to be in charge. So that's something that we definitely can utilize with that category field. Inception date, once again, something that can be reported on, but is not required. If a policy attestation frequency set at 6 months. So I'll talk about the attestation in a few minutes from now, but just remember this field, and I'll come back to that. And then attachments, this is something cool, and once again, I'm going to come back to this sooner because I want to talk about the policy language. You'll see that there are a couple of overlaps, or at least they appear to be overlapping between right up here. Statement, purpose, scope. We come down to our policy language. We have purpose and scope. And, you may think, okay, well, why would I want to record purpose and scope down here as well as up here? And that actually has to do with the attachment that's in this field. OnSpring has something called dynamic documents. And from a policy standpoint, something that across the board organizations do care about is the ability to publish their policies in a space where they are easily accessible, and or attestation can be performed on those, essentially confirmation that yes, I understand this, I've read this, etc. So by recording these different sections or these different policy language records, it allows you to generate a policy document directly from OnSpring. And I'll show you what that looks like here. Here we go. This is an example of a dynamic document. All of this is configurable. Essentially, replace this with your company logo, replace any sort of, branding, formatting, color schemes with your company's requirements. And the big piece of this is being able to pull content out of OnSpring and into this document. So you may ask, well, why would I want to do that? And why would I want to break it out in that fashion in OnSpring as opposed to just having this, housed elsewhere or controlled elsewhere? A big part of that is, and actually, hold on just a second. My internet just cut out. Bear with me. All right, sorry about that. So essentially, why you should, care about being able to document those specific sections in OnSpring as opposed to housing it elsewhere is from being able to tie that to either different approval, different approval processes, or even being able to tie those to specific risks, controls, and or regulatory content. So where that comes into play is if you're wanting to show compliance with a particular regulation, and you can provide evidence that, okay, our policies and the underlying content within those policies can be mapped directly to components of those regulations. It's just a really clean showcase of here's the regulation, here's our policy content. We have that linkage identified in OnSpring, and therefore you can report on that, and you can show because of this vendor security risk management policy, I'm now completely in compliance with Regulation X. We go down to our regulations, risks, and controls. This is really a few different reference fields going to either the controls application, risks, or as I mentioned, regulatory content. So you have the ability to, link that more actionable content, whether it's regulations, risks, controls, to your policies. When it comes to a policy review, this is kind of your just initial review, and there are some underlying workflow components within policies that we can take a deeper dive into at a later date. But if you're initially submitting a policy for review, it's something you can go through, mark this status as either awaiting review, approved, and have the policy show up or not show up in various reports or be visible to various users in OnSpring. With policy attestations, so this is, I told you I was going to revisit this in a couple minutes. If I scroll back up here, minimize that. Here's our policy attestation frequency. So this is essentially telling us that every 6 months, we need to either have some sort of confirmation of individuals that are impacted by this policy on the books. And we can do that in a couple of ways. I'll go right here and just create one. There's the assigned reviewer, me, confirmed, great, attestation complete. All right, so that's one way to do it, but you can also set it up to where records are automatically created and notifications are automatically sent out based on the policy attestation frequency in conjunction with that last attestation date. And you can see here, the next time that we could set up for a record to be created and a notification to go out, it would be 11/24/2019 based on the 6 months. Once again, if you're wanting to do more of an ad hoc attestation component, then it's as easy as clicking create new record. The policy acknowledgement survey results, this is kind of a different take on how you can record policy attestations. You can send these out via survey. And if that's something you'd be more interested in hearing about, it's a little bit more of a complex process than just clicking create new record, but that's something I'd be happy to go over with you more in depth. So here we can record exception requests for policies, and essentially we can create a new record there, provide some justification, to record the duration of this. It's saying the 30-day exception, and via our formula field, there we go. Our initial end date, our current end date set for June 23rd. There we can see is our policy, which is tied to this exception request. And then we have our submission status. I can submit that for review. Have a management reviewer there. Can provide risk ratings, review statuses, all of which to kind of speak to whether or not the exception request is going to be accepted or not, and if there are some additional maybe downstream impacts that could occur of this exception request in the event, of a high, medium, low risk rating. If in the event we close this earlier, there you go. Great, we've remedied whatever it is we needed the exception for in the first place. I can mark this as closed. It's going to automatically populate that date for us and close by. And then also similar functionality pertaining to legal requests. And then in the event you are wanting to kind of sunset a policy, once again, it's retire policy, policy retirement date, provide details, and this particular policy would drop off of either reports or out of view of OnSpring users. So all in all, I mean, that's pretty much from a policy application standpoint, and also some of the offshoot processes from that. I think that's a decent high level and at times lower level kind of start to the policy solution with OnSpring. If you have other questions or would like to see a more in-depth demonstration of this, feel free to get in touch with Tony, and always happy to jump on a call.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you very much.
Yep. Take care.